AI is not a technology, is a synthetic entity. I love what you have here, this discussion about the melding between humanity, transhumanism in a sense, but also the huge news that just dropped is that one of the biggest AI companies out there, Midjourney, is being sued by Disney, and I expect more are going to get in on this lawsuit over copyright infringement. And I'm sitting here thinking, wait a minute, that's exactly what you and I were talking about the very last time I had you on the show a couple of days ago.
Absolutely. Look, I can't believe I'm going to do this, but I'm actually going to defend Disney's actions on national television. The Disney attorney said piracy is piracy, and it's right. AI companies have basically plundered copyrighted material from publications, conservative and liberal publications, from movies, from news programs. They have basically plundered all of our intellectual property, and we're going to have these discussions and say, not just in the courts, because yeah, we can fight it out in the courts, but there's a lot more than that. It's a shift in terms of what it means, to have intellectual property, to be able to own what you created, and the way the AI companies are going, they obviously don't want you to own anything. Remember what Klaus Schwab said: "You'll own nothing and like it."
Well, and that's what it comes down to. So, and for folks who didn't catch the previous piece that you put up, what you were talking about was this idea that what these AI companies are doing is that they were going out and sucking up a lot of copyrighted content and essentially using it to program these large language models. So program Grok to train Grok, to train Midjourney, to train ChatGPT, and they're plugging in books, news articles, movies, podcasts, whatever, but not actually going and getting a license from any of the owners of this. And that is, and so Disney is coming in, and let's just be frank, we know that Disney has always been very, and anyone in the business knows that Disney is the strongest one when it comes to defending the IP. God forbid you mess around with Mickey Mouse or those others out there. Even though I believe the first iteration Steamboat Mickey is now free domain. It's in public domain because it hit the 100-year threshold. But no, Disney is extremely litigious. You drop something about the Avengers or one of their Marvel properties, Spider-Man now, I guess they have, whatever else, they're coming after you. They're absolutely coming after you. And so they've got the pockets to actually fight some of these big companies. Is that the idea here?
Absolutely. And look, they have the right to. It's their property. They paid a lot of money for Marvel. They've invested years into their intellectual property, whether you like Disney as a company, which I particularly don't. But at the same time, Disney has a right to its intellectual property. And what's happened is these AI companies, basically said, hey, we're going to steal everything we can to train our models, and we'll get back to the intellectual property later. But they haven't really moved fast enough for these to create these kind of license deals. And Disney is within its rights, and it's within its power to sue. And now what we talked about last time was, they're paying these liberal publications like massive deals to the New York Times, to the Washington Post, to Axios and Politico, and they're not, they need to make the same market deals with conservative publications like Post Millennial, Human Events, and the Washington Examiner, and Uncover DC. All of these publications that they are also taking intellectual property from, they need to pay for their content, not only for licensing purposes, but also to balance the scale, because we all know that AI has a massive liberal bias problem.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your new piece about the way we should be thinking about AI as an entity more than a technology?
Right, a technology. Look, AI is not a technology. We have designed AI in a way that it is really a synthetic entity. And what I mean by that is a technology is a tool that is wielded by humans, like a hammer, like a computer, right? Like you put an input, you click a button, you get an output. AI is different. AI is perfectly capable of being autonomous, to write code on its own, to create reports on it. You're able to use AI in many autonomous fashions. And when it's becoming autonomous and more autonomous, it's turning into a synthetic entity. And entities are like corporations, they're like governments, they're like humans, right? An entity requires governance. An entity requires morality. Entities without morality crash and burn. Entities without the principles that are found that are installed in the foundation of our nation, the biblical principles that are founded, is what made the United States the best country in the world. And we need to instill biblical principles into the AI framework, into the core of the AI programming, and to make sure that it always protects human dignity. But we do have to treat it as an entity, and we're running out of time, because the longer it takes for us to make these decisions, like thou shalt not steal is a great example with what's going on with content in Disney. If the longer it takes us to do it, the more powerful AI is going to become, and the harder it's going to be to constrain.
We now see Disney, the behemoth that is Disney, is fighting AI, and they're looking at this and saying, look, you're stealing our content. Well, another one that you and I were just chatting in the break, and you brought up that Google might also be facing a lawsuit as well, or potentially steering into some choppy water with something that they're doing. Isn't that right?
Well, absolutely. If you go to Google search right now and you're typing in something, you're pulling up Google summary of the content that you're looking for. And where are they getting that content from? They're getting it from the content creators who have intellectual property rights to it. And what it's doing is creating a zero-click economy for these publishers, which means that everything is going to be answered for you in these chat windows, and you won't need to go to the source. And obviously, we know that publishers and content creators earn money on their content based on advertising or selling subscriptions or selling selling books and videos and such like that. So what they're doing is they're taking all of that content, they're using it for their own benefit. Now, of course, there's ads on Google, so Google's making money on that content, but the actual content creators are getting pulled out of it, and we have to think this through. We can't survive if the content creators are going to be starved. We need good content. We need to pay for it.
Well, and so what Google is doing now is, rather than link to, and everyone knows, Google started as a search engine. The idea, and going back, that was, really kind of, I guess I would say, a bridge between Web 1.0, Web 2.0 was the search engine, because of course, websites were going back into like deep internet lore, right? People had websites, but you didn't know what website was out there because there was no way to know what you didn't know. And so the idea of the search engine came up. Well, okay, I can search the website, and there were a ton of these. There was Metacrawler, there was Yahoo, and then eventually Google came up and just beat them all. And they still would go to link to a site. So you would go to that site, and then you could click, and you would get their content. You might get a little, 2-sentence blurb in the middle. But now what they're doing is they're going to the site, summarizing it for you, and then tracking back. So of course, what does that do? Well, that keeps you on Google longer, so you're being fed that Google's content more and more, and that's of course what Google wants, right?
Oh, absolutely, because they don't have to share their revenue. They keep all the revenue on. And look, Google has its own antitrust issues, and this isn't going to help that. Not even a little bit. So, what has to happen is they've got to inject those links in. Perplexity is actually doing a better job with this, because they'll summarize the stuff, but they'll tell you exactly where they got their content and give you the links so you can go to those pages on their own. But all of these AI platforms must license the content from the content creator before it can use it, and they should. It's the right thing to do.